morning, everyone. Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Horning, with Reginald Andre and Randy Bryan. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
Pretty good, man. How's it going?
Can't complain. Not such a great weather day here in Philly, but how's things in San Marcos?
It's beautiful down here, somewhere down in Texas. Gorgeous weather outside.
It looks like you guys are both in sunny weather. Andre, what are you dealing with?
Yeah, 86 and partly sunny.
Yeah. Jealous. All right, boys. So welcome to another episode, and let's get the social media thing going. Let's invite some people in and get some viewers on this channel while we record live. What do we got going on this week, boys? We're going to talk about a couple things. So this week on this episode of Security Squawk Podcast, we're going to dive into a couple topics, right? We're going to talk about something known as ransomware shame and some pretty interesting statistics gathered by Fox Business. And I think they're pretty eye-opening and statistics that probably people would be pretty shocked by. And then we're going to dive into a little bit of a discussion on why it's a really bad idea. We've been seeing these massive ransomware attacks for probably about 2 years now at the dollar figures that we're seeing. Prior to that, these numbers were not this high. And why it's kind of really showing, and the data is coming out, that it's a bad idea to pay the ransom for a lot of different reasons. And we're going to go over those reasons today on the show. Before we get into it, remember, Andre, Randy, and I don't get paid for this. We don't do sponsorships. We don't annoy you with any commercials or anything like that. So help us share the show. That's the only fee that we ask. Help us spread the word. Help us help other people become more cyber aware. And in that, they're going to be educated and they're going to know how to protect themselves from these ever increasing and evolving threats that we like to keep you in front of by giving you the latest and greatest information. Our show is growing weekly, guys. The downloads go up every single week. So people are finding us, but the 30 or 40 people that downloaded our show last week, if they share that out, then we get 60 downloads, then we get 100 downloads, right? And that's how the word gets spread. So don't keep our content and our information in your own world. Share it out with your friends and family if you think we do good. If you don't think we do good, don't come back and watch the show and don't share the show. That's it. So anything you guys want to jump into before I pull up the Fox News content?
No, sir.
All right, brother. There we go. So I want to share the screen, obviously, because I want people to see the data. But ransomware shame. More than half of business owners conceal a cyber breach. Now, let's just start right there. Are you guys surprised? Because I'm not.
Nope, not surprised at all. Nobody wants to tell their customers or to tell their vendors or anything like that they weren't taking their security seriously or they had a breach in security. Nobody wants to be on the news for that.
Yep. I read an article yesterday. I don't exactly remember where it was that I read it. Hang on, this video is going to start playing. I don't remember exactly where I read it, but I think I know where I read it, and I think you guys are part of the same group. This company came in, an IT company came in and did a ransomware remediation for a company, and they weren't a client of theirs initially. They're a client now, but that business was hit that was the fourth time they were hit with ransomware.
Wow.
The fourth time. And that business is small enough where it's not going to get out there, right? So people are doing business with other businesses that are getting hit with ransomware multiple times. And every time this company, the previous 3 times, the company paid the ransom and they got their data back. This fourth time they paid the ransom and they didn't get their data back. So they hired a company to come in and help them. So you have companies out there that are just like this company that don't work with any IT professionals. They won't work with any cybersecurity professionals. They do everything themselves because maybe the owner thinks he's got a handle on it. And then what they do is they turn around and they just pay the ransom. And they have no professionals that are out there helping them with this stuff. So going into the article, 1/3, 32% of enterprises experienced a six-figure breach last year, and well over half, 61% of business owners admitted to concealing a breach, according to the findings from a global survey of over 1,400 IT decision makers at large organizations by cybersecurity firm Arctic Wolf. Now, I know Arctic Wolf. I know the businesses that they work with, and they don't work with small companies. They work with, mid to enterprise size companies. And 1,400 is a lot of businesses. 14, quite frankly, 1,400 it's not like they asked 100 businesses or 200 businesses. They asked 1,400 businesses. And there aren't that many companies at the mid-market and enterprise level. This is a significant number of businesses in that sector. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not like there's the small business sector where there's, hundreds of thousands of small businesses. When you get up to, 10 million plus, you're in the 0.5% of businesses, right? If you make $1 million, and I don't think a lot of people have this perspective, if you have a business that makes $1 million, you are in the top 1% of businesses in this country.
Wow.
Which is like, when I learned that, it blew my mind, right? When you get to 3 or 5 million, you're like less than 0.5% that make it that far. So, that's the perspective I think that people need to have, because I don't think that people realize that there's a lot of sub $1 million a year companies out there, a lot more than the other side, right? 99% of the businesses out there are doing $1 million or less. So these companies that they asked in this survey are bigger companies that should really be reporting this stuff, should probably be doing a lot more around cybersecurity than they are. But let's look at the data, guys. Let's look at the rest of the survey. And I want you guys to comment on your thoughts or your reactions to each of these. So 78% C-suite executives claim that they'd be willing to pay the ransom.
I have a comment on the previous statistic.
Yep.
Just wondering, where did Arctic Wolf, was this a survey of their existing clients? And it could be that's these numbers could potentially be a little high if they were people that had been breached before, and then that breach kind of drove them into the arms of Arctic Wolf. Just wondering.
My guess would be, because I know this report, and it's not a guess, they surveyed the industry. So they put this out as a survey and asked basically CIOs and CISOs to fill it out.
All right. So you were saying.
Yeah, I was just saying, I want your guys' reaction to this one point here. 78% of C-suite executives claim they would be willing to pay the ransom. Are you surprised by that? That's almost 50%, right? So
not surprised, because, these are people that it says C-suite executives. So you're talking about people that are most likely leaders by nature. And, they don't want to get out into all the weeds and deal with all the, this and that of taking forever to get back, and probably just want a quick solution, Yeah,
I 100% agree with that. That's the main reason that they probably justify doing that is that's their quickest way to pay dirt, right? That's the quickest way that they're going to get back up and running, because, when you talk to your IT professionals, you're going to hear from them that it's going to take us X amount of time to, get the system back up and running from backups and things like that. And it's like, okay, ransomware negotiator, how long will it take for them to unencrypt the files? And it's, half the time. Seems like a better option up front, but let's be realistic. what happens when we pay that ransom? Like, what are some of the things that can happen? And let's educate business owners so they are aware that when you pay that ransom, it's not as cut and dry as you pay the money and you get your data back. So what are some things that could happen along the way if I pay the ransom? If I'm a business owner, I pay the ransom. What are some things that could happen that could prevent me from getting my data back?
Well, the first thing is paying the ransom. You're just now enticing that hacker to just continue their operation. So you're kind of just allowing them to continue business, affecting other businesses. And then secondly, even with paying, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get your information back. Right. And it's also a very, very slow process many times to unencrypt that information. And then also you have what is called double extortion, where even though you paid, they can now go after whatever that information is, be it clients, vendors, or whatever. They can go after those people and then say, hey, we have your information. You need to pay us or else we're going to expose it.
Yeah, and the statistical, I guess, reality is that only like a third get 100% of their data back. So when you pay the ransom, you pay the ransom, maybe you get most of it back, but you're actually, below half of statistically, flipping a coin, you've got a pretty low chance of actually getting 100% of it back anyway. But it's like that whole thing where, like kidnapping, they say, the U.S. doesn't negotiate with, hostage takers or whatever. And, everybody kind of agrees with that until it's somebody that they know, what I mean? Then it becomes personal. And I think like, it's real easy to say like, well, we shouldn't pay the ransom and, and it just feeds cyber crime. But then these executives get in the middle of this and it's their business that's on the line. And that psychology changes everything. And the cyber criminals are very good at making that psychology hit home.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. I mean, you guys, I don't have anything to add. You guys hit the nail on the head. These are the issues that crop up when you think, oh, I'll just pay the ransom. And, quite frankly, a lot of businesses' cybersecurity plan or incident response plan is paying the ransom. So, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, if that's a good idea or not. And we have some data that shows, that it might not be. But let's go to the next one. 56% would be willing to pay over $100,000 to resume operations. Thoughts on that one?
It's a small number. If you got, 30, 40, 50 employees and they're all twiddling their thumbs and can't work and you're losing, if you're making $1 million in revenue, $1 million plus, that's roughly about $100,000. Right. So, pay it, like you said, it's the, let's just pay it and fix it. Let's just deal with the problem and let's move on.
Yep. So, I agree 100% on that. And, at the end of the day, $100,000 relative to what, right? What size companies are these 1,400? What size are we dealing with? Knowing Arctic Wolf, they're probably in that mid market and above. So you're definitely talking about well into, close to 10 million, if not over 10 million. So you're really talking about a small percentage of revenue compared to like where they are at. So like if you were talking to a small business who had $1 million in revenue, $100,000 would seem like a lot. That's almost 10% of their revenue. But if you're closer to 10 million, this is 1% of your revenue, right? And you guys know, we know that 3 to 6% is where things need to be right now of total revenue dedicated to IT or security. If you're looking at it as both, like IT, infrastructure, and cybersecurity, you're going to be closer to 6%, especially if you're in a regulated industry. If you're looking at it separately, 3% for infrastructure, 3% for cybersecurity, right? And that's how you get to the 6%. Like, and your whole IT budget should be close to 6%. That's what the industry standard really is right now. If you look at enterprise level companies and what they're spending. So, if you are investing nothing into this, you know, and you're willing to pay the ransom, $100,000, somebody needs to consult with you and tell you that that's not nearly enough. Especially when you're going to get a ransom demand of a couple million, right? $100,000 isn't going to get you anywhere. When we're seeing ransom demands, I mean, what happened to New Cooperative, right? You know, we really don't even know what happened because they got real tight-lipped once it started getting public. But last I checked, they were at 5.9 million. I don't think they have their data back yet.
Yikes.
74% of executives with hybrid work environments believe their in-house IT security teams lack the capability to defend against ransomware.
That's sad and funny at the same time.
I wish I had a white flag because I wave it right now.
Yeah.
So that
and you know, we know that statistically in 2020 that cyber attacks, you know, increased by somewhere, depending on who you read, between 400 and 600%.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when the lockdowns happened, even though that's been over a year and a half ago, it was pretty chaotic with people working from home and, you know, back and forth in the office. We still have and see some of that. And I can just imagine that a C-level executive kind of watching that would just create tons of angst anyway, because they know that you're taking them out of a protected environment or a more protected environment in the office, because they probably have a decent firewall. It's going to block a lot of the traffic through the ports and all that. And then you put them in a home environment where, you know, you've got the 14-year-old kid who's a hacker, or, you know, who downloads, you know, stuff on LimeShare. Do kids still use LimeShare these days? But anyway, you know what I mean? They're bringing stuff into the home network.
LimeWire or LimeShare? Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's BearShare and LimeWire. I don't know, something like that. I don't use either one of those. But my point being that you might have some teenager that's doing something like that, like downloading music or whatever, that's bringing crap into the network. And, you know, it's a pretty chaotic environment, this whole hybrid work. And that's, you know, I think that's the key in this executive is hybrid work environments. And maybe they feel like their IT staff just lacks the capability to deal with it. I'm not sure about that part.
3 out of 4 business owners think that the guys that they have responsible for their cybersecurity can't even do the job.
Yeah.
Sweet. That makes me feel great. I don't know about y'all, but that's just pathetic when I know companies like us exist and we have the capacity to take on more business. And then you read things like this.
Right.
It's like, how hard are you looking? What are you trying to do as a business owner? Are you stepping up and looking for the resources? Or are you just looking at your current team? Because newsflash for you, any business owner that has IT staff and they've been with them for, let's say, an average of more than 5 years, those people don't have the skills to do this stuff. So if you have a network engineer who built your network and constructed your network, and you didn't send them to any kind of cybersecurity training, or he hasn't done any cybersecurity training on his own, just because he knows how to make computers talk and make the network work doesn't mean he knows how to secure it properly. And I look at networks all the time, and I see how they're constructed and how they're built. And guys do things to make things work. They don't necessarily do things to make them secure. Right. And you see a lot of configurations where you're like, well, you could do that a little better, or you could make that a little secure by doing this or that. And if your expectation is that those same people are going to be able to protect you from ransomware and cybersecurity threats, you're sorely mistaken. Now, I'm not saying everyone fits this boat. There are guys who go out and they get this knowledge and they get certifications and they are capable of doing these things when they were once just, you know, a network administrator. But the reality of it is like business owners don't understand this stuff. They don't get that, you know, my network guy might not be keeping up with the times, although he's a really good network guy and we don't ever have any downtime. And like, I almost think that business owners get a false sense of security around these types of things. Like they kid themselves by telling them, information that's really false at the end of the day if you really want to analyze it and strip it down. And 60% of executives believe their employees could not identify a cyber attack. So these numbers are high. What's 60% of 1,400? Like 800 or 900 companies. So I mean, what do you guys what scares me is it doesn't say like IT employees. It just says employees. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think the average employee is going to be able to identify a cyber attack unless it's ransomware on their screen, flashing, pay me money.
Well, yeah. And it underscores the huge need for employee training. I mean, that's in our stacks, the three of us as businesses. That's in almost every list coming out of the government right now and cybersecurity experts. You've got to have employee trainings because they're the weakest link.
Yeah, my concern is that this is not speaking to every employee. My concern is that number is executives believing that their own technical IT employees could not identify a cyber attack, right? And we know straight up that ransomware attacks take a while to unfold. It's not like these hackers get into your network and within 30 minutes they're deploying ransomware. They're in there for weeks, maybe days, maybe weeks, maybe months, figuring out what you have, where it lives, and everything that they can do to damage you, so you have to pay them. One of the things I'm talking about is they'll scope around your network to find where your backup servers are. And if you're not doing proper network segmentation and they find that on your network from another employee's computer, they're going to try to figure out how to move laterally in that network so they can then delete those backups. And then you don't have backups to work with when you're negotiating the ransom, and they know this. And my concern is that like the executive, that this statement right here is the executive saying, yeah, we don't think our own IT people could recognize if like a cyber criminal was in our network moving around. Like the only way we're going to find out is when the ransomware, software is flashing on the screen that we owe them Bitcoin. Yeah.
This statistic, they don't really give any explanation. Is it the IT employees? Is it all employees? I think that both could be correct because of the previous statistic. 74% believe their in-house security teams or their IT people are unable to fend against ransomware. So, regardless of which one it is, it's a grim outlook if it's true.
And then go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, I'll add too is they're polling the executives, and I think it's more the executives that have no clue about cybersecurity, and now because they're not being talked, their IT people aren't talking to them about it.
Good
so
point.
They're confused. It just trickles down.
100%. Those results reflect the constant drumbeat of reports of successful ransomware attacks that leave executives feeling vulnerable. So, I mean, I guess my next thought process here is like, if like these numbers are shocking to me because they're so ridiculously high. And what is a business owner to do if they feel this way? Because it seems like there's a lot of people right here who we're talking to, right? It's close to 1,200, 1,400 CEOs of organizations, when you're talking about 78%. So what are these 1,200, 1,100 CEOs? How can we make them feel better? Because I feel like their perspective is distorted on what's really going on out there. Like, you can prevent this stuff. You can do a lot more to protect your companies and protect your critical assets and your data. What can we say to them? I mean, this is why we're building this podcast and why we're trying to get this word out here. I mean, what can we say to them to make them realize that, like, you might have the wrong team on the bench, right?
Yeah.
I
And
mean, I would add just okay. So, as a leader, if they're feeling angst about something, you as a leader, as a business owner, you have to trust your gut a lot of times, and a lot of times things like this start as a gut feeling. Then that gut feeling needs to motivate you into action. This is a problem, like you're just now saying. This is a problem that can be solved. It's a problem that, you know, okay, in 1900, people were scared to death about living on the coast because of hurricanes. Now you can buy a house down there. You can reasonably protect your house. You can get insurance in case the worst happens, and you can sleep every night. You can sleep well, knowing that you've done everything you can to protect yourself. That's where the business owners need to get. They need to see that future
Mhm.
of them being able to sleep great at night and knowing that they're doing everything that they can either to protect or remediate, because it's going to happen. So it
That's a
should be
great
motivating.
That's a great point, and I guess I want to share my perspective on what that looks like for a business owner, right? And what we do here at Exact IT is we base everything on a risk score, right? So if you're a business owner and you know what your risk score is, um, that risk score can allow you to understand where you have risk in your business and where you don't, right? And I think that's a lot of the anxiety that business owners have, and why they feel this way is because they just don't know, right? And a lot of times IT people tend to do things in silos, right? Like,
Mhm.
and then the attitude of the business owner becomes, well, they have me covered, right? And maybe you feel that way, and you have a false sense of security because that guy's been your guy for 20 years, and he's run your network well. You've never had any problems. But like I said earlier, it's a different skill set. And if they didn't acquire those skills, you basically, just to give you a crazy example, you basically have a bus driver driving your ferry, right? That's the best example I can give you. Oh, well, he can drive a bus, so he can drive a ferry. No, he can't. Like, you can't say a network engineer can protect your network. It's two different skill sets. And quite frankly, you should have teams of people who set up your network and then people who test that network to make sure the guy who set it up didn't leave doors open and didn't leave you vulnerable to an attack. It shouldn't be the same guy checking his own work, because look, most people that can check their own work aren't going to be upfront about that we have this problem here that we have to now spend money on, or there's a lot of different reasons. Head trash, I'll call it, that a technician or an engineer might not want to come to the owner and say, we have this vulnerability or we have this gap here, because they might think, oh, if I tell them this, I'm going to lose my job. And like stuff like that happens. And then the owners and the C-suite people don't find out about it. So I want to point out this one thing, and then I kind of want to move on because we're running up against the time here. So, despite recent interventions into cybersecurity issues, executives lack faith in the government's ability to protect them from cyber threats, which is perfect. Like, that's the attitude that they need to have, because I've said this before. The government isn't going to solve this problem. Biden, again, is having a bunch of countries come in, and they're going to have a ransomware summit, which nothing will happen. And we're going to continue as private businesses to continue to deal with this problem. And we have to do what we need to do to protect our critical assets and critical data. The concerning piece of this paragraph for me is adding that the majority of organizations, 60%, believe that spending on new security tools and services is the most effective way of stopping attacks. And the key word I want to cue in on here is new security tools. Yes, it says end services, but my concern is, and what I'm seeing out there in the industry, is that business owners think there's going to be some tool, some silver bullet that comes along and solves this ransomware / security problem. And I'm here to tell you today that you're living in fantasy land. There's no silver bullet. There's no one tool. You got to look at this like a sport or a football game, right? There's no one thing a NFL team or a college football team is going to do to be a powerhouse or to win a football game. They plan, they start on Tuesday, they work for 4 or 5 days on a plan to beat the other team. And there's no difference between this and what we're doing in cybersecurity than what, a football team might do to prepare for, if I could draw that analogy, right? These good football teams that are out there today, my Eagles are not one of them, are not showing up every week hoping and this new gadget player, this new trick is what's going to, make them the NFL powerhouse. It's fundamental blocking and tackling. It's in the trenches. For however long football's been around, it's been done the same way over and over again, maybe little different flavors here and there. But fundamentally, in the trenches, blocking and tackling is where everybody knows every good football team starts. And it's the same thing with cybersecurity. Your team, your framework, your fundamentals, how you incorporate cybersecurity as a piece of your business culture is really how you fundamentally beat this problem. Did I paint a good enough picture there? Because I tried to, break it down to something that people can understand. But my fear is that people are going to think, I buy this tool, I buy this endpoint protection, I put this spam filter on my email, and I'm good. That's my cybersecurity, right? And that's not the case. So I want you guys to kind of expand on that. Tell me if you disagree with me. But that's a big concern for me, is that these guys think that there's going to be a new security tool. And the other thing is that, this also from the other side scares me, because now you're going to have companies out there marketing their shit as the tool, the silver bullet, right? And companies are going to buy these tools thinking, well, I got, black something security and, I'm good, and it just does one piece of the puzzle. So
yeah,
expand on that for me.
Yeah, there's no such, we don't need new tools. We just need what we have now to be implemented. Implement the 2 form factor, do your updates. Don't have your passwords, the same password multiple places. And going back to your analogy with the fundamentals, if we just follow the fundamentals, we, for the most part, would be all right now. We're seeing, the SolarWinds hack and different attacks that's been happening. It's because of the most stupidest and most preventative ways these companies are getting hacked. Mm-hmm. So that would be my thing. You mentioned, what would you tell the business owners? Exactly that. Just go back to your fundamentals, and more than likely your company is going to be protected.
Well, and I would also kind of go off on your, and I agree with both you guys. I'd go off and add on to the whole football analogy. And once again, going back to 1900, in 1900, you're, A&M's going to play University of Texas or whatever, and there's hardly any recon going on. I mean, they're just doing, basic this and that, but your opponent is evolving, so you have to evolve. And yeah, there's some basic things that are gonna cover everything, but also the criminals are becoming more sophisticated. So I see it as a both and, cyber, the pipeline attack, somebody didn't get offboarded, that's like security 101, like what you're saying, that's one of the basics. But then there's other things out there that the opponents changed and we need to learn. I took a more positive view of that statement, Brian, just from the fact of, at least they were open to the idea that there is hope, and there is ways. Although I feel like what you said, I agreed 100% with what both y'all said, but I felt like even though they have hope, maybe they could be marketed to and fall for that whole silver bullet. Mm-hmm. It's not silver bullet; it's a layered approach.
Right.
You know, it's an approach that you've got hurdles at every single level, both for the hackers to get through, and also for notification, so you can see something that's coming instead of just being surprised by it. So,
and this article, what it does for me is it reinforces the fact that, you know, one of the things we know as business owners is there's certain metrics in our business that we should pretty much always be aware of, right? And, you know, it could be different for every business, but, you know, if you're a growth mindset business, you should probably know, like, you know, your sales playbook and what those numbers look like, and, you know, how many people you need to be talking to, and, you know, how many new appointments or how many calls you need to be making. You know, as a C level, you might need to know the revenue and the net profit, and, you know, have the health of the business from that standpoint. But, you know, we've been saying for a long time that cybersecurity needs to happen in the C-suite and not in the IT, you know, room or IT department. And, you know, I just feel like your risk score around a ransomware attack or cybersecurity is one of those numbers that every CEO needs to know. And like, we're well beyond the days of that not being the case. And, you know, I know all of my clients who engage with us for cybersecurity, they know what their risk score is because we cover it every quarter. And that's, you know, another key metric that CEOs, if they don't know that number or they don't have some way to quantify what their risk score is, then they're burying their head in the sand and they're just accepting the risk. And that's not a good thing. And then at the end of this Fox Business article, they kind of pile onto the data and go in and say Veritas, they surveyed more than 2,000 global IT leaders, and it said that they had experienced an average of almost 3 ransomware attacks per company that had led to downtime in the last 12 months. Right? So that's almost 6,000 ransomware attacks. Now, it doesn't mean all 2,000 companies were attacked. One of those companies could have been attacked 10 times, right? That brings that average up. But I don't think the world knows or realizes that out of 2,000 companies, there's 2.57 ransomware attacks that led to downtime. It doesn't even say, what about the ones that didn't lead to downtime?
right.
You only got one computer. You know what I mean? And then the downtime that in the last 12 months, by the way, in 12 months, and 14% admit to 5 or more ransomware attacks causing downtime in the last year. 5 or more. So people, you're not hearing about 6,000 ransomware attacks a year. You're not hearing about this stuff. It's not making the news. You might hear about 1 or 2 big ones a month. But that's the perspective I want people to have. 6,000 is almost 20 a day.
Yep.
You know, and these are big companies. This is only a sample of 2,000 companies around the world. So these numbers are mind-boggling to me, right? And then I want to jump into quickly. I'm going to pull up that Barron's article, but just, you know, we got this problem with businesses, right? You know, we don't want to pay the ransom, or we're telling businesses not to pay the ransom. But then we got this whole other industry over here, the insurance industry, that, you know, their kind of default thing is just pay the ransom, you know, because they want to move on and they don't want to spend the money on, you know, their team being in there and helping with the remediation. And the quicker they can get in and out, you know, the less money it's going to cost them to deal with, right? So, you know, Barron's did this little deep dive on, you know, how cyber insurers are contributing to this problem. And one of the things that is a problem is that there's only maybe 10 or so cyber insurers out there, like actual underwriters that provide cyber insurance. And that list is dwindling. The other problem is that these, you know, 10 or so companies keep going back to the same 2 or 3 companies to help out with the ransomware remediation. So now all these companies are kind of in bed together, right? And the model right now for insurance companies is let's just get these criminals paid and get the data back. So the first thing a ransomware operator wants to know, do you have cyber insurance? Right? And that shouldn't be something that should be known. And it sounds to me, based on my research, that these ransomware negotiators aren't being very smart in how they communicate, because the ransomware people are picking up that these are the same guys. So they're at the point now where they're asking for specific negotiators over others because they know that they're more likely to get paid if they deal with this guy versus this guy. And it's like, it would be like if I'm the hacker and I know Randy will give me money, but Andre's a hard ass and he tries to get me down to zero every time. I'm sitting there on the chat going, hey, I want to talk to Randy. If you're dealing with this insurance company, I want to deal with Randy and I don't want anything to do with Andre. And I'm not even going to talk to Andre. And that's literally what's going on out there. So I don't know how, as a business owner, that makes you feel if you have cyber insurance. But cyber insurance to me at this point, and I'm getting pissed off at the insurance industry, just so you know, and I'm kind of got my target set on them, because I don't like it when an industry who's had two major insurance carriers get hit with ransomware, and I'm talking about CNA Insurance and Tokyo Marine, who are both cyber insurance underwriters, and then they are coming out and dictating what tools, like what Allstate did, what tools can be on Allstate systems, or they're coming to MSPs and they're saying in their agreements that you must do this, and this is how you must handle your operations, or we're not going to give you even E&O insurance, guys. They're denying E&O insurance at this point for our industry if you don't use certain tools or you don't do certain things within your business. I just don't think that industry, who has no expertise in how to protect companies, has any business telling our industry and companies in our industry what to do. Our industry should be telling them what to do, because we are the experts and they're the ones getting hit with ransomware. Now, I'm not saying IT companies aren't getting hit with ransomware, because they absolutely are. But come on, like this is like the insurance companies telling the doctors how to do medicine, right? And we all know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want you guys to share your thoughts for a couple minutes here on this, and then we'll wrap it up.
You kind of said it all on that aspect, man. That's why I still go back to it. It needs to start to get regulated. We need some rules. There's no rules in place, so it's kind of like everybody just doing whatever sticks for that moment, and then that's it.
Right, because now you have private businesses kind of self-regulating, and the insurance business wants to make money off these types of policies and things like that, but they're not going to continue to make stupid decisions when this is causing them to lose massive amounts of money. But I'd much rather see the insurance business just say, you know what, we're not going to cover cyber insurance, or we're not going to pay ransomware anymore, than do what they're currently doing, which is, okay, Mr. IT company, we're not going to give you an E&O policy, which isn't even a cyber insurance policy. It's an errors and omissions policy, which is like if you give bad advice or you screw up some kind of project or job, that insurance is to cover you if somebody were to sue you for that, right? So they're saying we're not going to give you E&O insurance if you don't do X, Y, and Z. And I just feel like that's bad. It's bad all around for our industry, for the insurance industry. And I think they're out of school talking to IT companies and saying, like, you got to do all this stuff or we're not going to offer you insurance.
Yeah, I would just add to this, like, insurance, your cybersecurity insurance at your company ought to be just that. It ought to be insurance. Insurance is not a cybersecurity plan. It's a last ditch safety net in case the plan doesn't work. That's the whole point of it. And so you need to set up your cybersecurity at your business to where you never need that cybersecurity insurance, to where you're never going to have to fall back on it. I know that's not exactly what this article was talking about.
No, but it's a great point, because you're basically saying, instead of walking in, maybe you're not saying this, but I think you are.
Yeah.
When the insurance company shows up to deal with the event, instead of automatically going to, okay, we're gonna pay the ransom, which seems like that's what they're doing. Like, let's get in there and start negotiating, working on towards paying the ransom. Coming in and saying, okay, have you executed your plan? And if it's like, what plan? Then the insurance company walks out the door.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you don't have a plan? Well, your policy said you had a plan. The other interesting thing that I read in this article, and unfortunately I can't highlight it because I can't go down, is that it did say in here that most insurance executives feel like there's no way, and I completely disagree with this, there's no way for these insurance companies to assess the risk on these businesses that are, applying for cyber insurance. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, because that's what I do all day. We assess risk on businesses all the time. And I can come at you with a number and tell you exactly what their risk score is. So I can go to an insurance company and say, we just did an assessment on this business for you, and this is their risk score.
Mm-hmm.
So based on my risk score, you can come up with a number for a premium that'll make money. And I've talked to a lot of insurance companies about this, guys, and they still give out the Excel spreadsheet. It's still self-attestation by the business owner or whoever helps them fill out that form on what they're doing, right? And there's no verification process that this is what you're actually doing. Or, you have AV on all your computers, but is it actually on? Is it actually functioning? Is it actually doing anything? We can get that deep with this stuff and go back to the insurance companies and say, hey, here's where they're at. How much do you want to charge them for insurance? Because their risk score out of 100 is a 42. And this business over here, they're an 87. Right? And then that's the number that these insurance companies need to determine, okay, this business is a huge risk. This business is a little risk. So but the reality of it is that they're just dumping everybody into a pool and they're raising everybody's rates. Everybody's paying more for this stuff. And now they're looking for ways to not pay the claims.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because that shows a lack of understanding on their part of the problem.
Right.
But then the other side of the mouth, they're dictating, this is how you should deal going into it. This is what you should have on your computers going into it. But by saying what they're saying they don't really understand the problem.
100%.
So it's the blind leading the blind, or whatever.
I have my target set on them, because I'm going to do everything I can and use my platform to educate people that this is bullshit and how this is being handled. And I'll tell you what, another thing that's bullshit, that how things are being handled. CISA. They throw shit on the wall every week, every day, a new framework, a new thing, a new this, a new that. And then they come out and they give this ridiculous thing right before Labor Day on what small business owners should do if they're working for an MSP. And then they basically put in some fodder about some bullshit about how you should have a VPN set up between your MSP and your network, and they should use the VPN to access your network. And then you should use basically accounts that you turn on and turn off, just like you turn it on when the MSP or the IT company needs the remote in and do their thing, and then you turn it off when they're done. And that is, again, what you just said, Randy, CISA's basic understanding of how this shit works. That is the worst advice I ever heard our government cybersecurity wing give business, is that an MSP should create a VPN into that client's network. No, that is the last thing you want to do. The last thing you want to do is have a trusted network be able to connect into your network, that's you guys understand like how that makes my head explode, right? Like you guys get it, right? Like the last thing you want to do is create this trust connection that somebody could eventually run into an exploit.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just CISA's lack of awareness and understanding of how our business does business, and a lack of understanding of what a VP, which is crazy to me, but it's reality when you put things out like this. A lack of understanding of what a VPN connection does and the trust level that it exists on VPN connections between networks. I can't explain it any other way, but when you create VPN connections, depending on how they're set up, but by default, they're typically trusted connections, meaning like you're allowed to dial in and your traffic is good traffic from my eyes. Any you guys see it any different?
It's a good point.
I mean, CISA is really putting a lot of crap out there. And it's almost like, I've been in some like organizations where you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. Well, this is like 15 fire hoses and the amount of crap that they keep putting out every week. And people don't read it. People don't understand it. And, if I really did a deep dive in what they're putting out, I'm sure I could find a lot of things that conflict with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really frustrating to me because, like, we look at this stuff and we go, the good thing for me is like that a document, no SMB is going to read it. Right. So it's never going to go anywhere. But like, I felt like CISA was really speaking out of school there and doing our industry a disservice by putting that out. But it's, I look at that as the government bureaucratic kind of mindset that we just got to get things out there to make it look like we're doing something over here.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it.
Thanks, Andre. So I don't know, guys. I'm going to wrap it up there. If you guys want to add anything, we can kind of talk about it here. But great discussion. I think we've brought a lot of insight and spotlight on some things that a lot of people don't know about and aren't aware of. So like I say at the beginning of the show, I'm going to say at the end of the show, if you were educated, if you learned something today, please share our show, share it with your network, share it with your community, share it with your friends and family. You're not going to hear this anywhere else. You're not going to hear deep dives on statistics and what the real world looks like in terms of this stuff. And quite frankly, if you're not a business owner and you're just a consumer and you're just a dude out there, I'd be highly scared about giving my information to companies. Unless you don't care and you're just accepted the fact that your information is going to get compromised one day and you're just going to have to deal with things like identity theft and, God knows if, you're a business owner, your company becomes a target because of, a hack somewhere else. These are things are all real. They happen every day. You see the numbers. We're not sitting here talking about things that happen to 10 or 20 businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about hundreds of attacks a day on businesses. And, we don't hear about it in the news because it might not fit the agenda du jour, right? There's a lot of things being talked about out there, debt ceilings, infrastructure, Evergrande. The whole time there's thousands of ransomware attacks happening. And it's just like, I pitch these stories to these guys and they get back to me and say, it's not worthy to be on, our broadcast. It's not newsworthy enough. So, these ransomware attacks are becoming numb, right? People are just like, hey, that new cooperative thing didn't get much coverage.
Mm-mm.
And it's still ongoing right now. And nobody knows what's going on because the mainstream media stopped writing about it. And I think they shut their lips, realizing it was a bad idea to kind of publicly put this stuff out here. And that's where most of these companies are out there, guys. They're not disclosing this stuff. They're not telling you that your information was compromised. A lot of times they don't believe that their information was even compromised, right, Andre? How many times did we talk about that throughout this podcast? Yeah. So that's the reality, and that's where we're at. So that's it for me, boys. I'm ready to sign off.
All right.
Get your credit reports locked. That's
That's your thing. Lifelong.
Man, well, especially in light of what you were just saying just now, because there's a lot of stuff that's out there. I think there was a new thing with LinkedIn.
Yep. There's not
what was
enough criminals out there to get through the data.
So just lock your credit report, and then that's
Right.
not the end all to end all.
Just because there was a hack today doesn't mean your information isn't going to get compromised 2 years from now.
Right.
It's that they haven't gotten to you yet.
Mm-hmm.
They got a big database they got to get through. Big database. And then you got hackers upon hackers compiling databases, right? From this hack, from that hack. Seeing if there's any similarities in names, email addresses, phone numbers, passwords. It's not good. Well, that's what's going on. But these numbers are staggering, and I hope you learned a lot from this. And we'll see you on the other side. We'll see you next week. Security Squawk Podcast. Share us out.